The whole course is moving towards the study of key concepts in Gurmat. And by Gurmat, I understand the term as signifying the philosophy of the Sikh Gurus, or the teachings of the Sikh Gurus. Gurmat seems to be understood mainly as a lived practice, but it's also much more than that. It is a philosophy, but the idea of the philosophy seems to have been left behind in academic Sikh studies and also within the lived sector as well. So we're going to try and focus, particularly towards the end of the week, on teasing out some of these key concepts and trying to reinterpret them a little way. So just to get into this course, so the main aim of the course, essentially what I've done is I've treated it like a boot camp. You're going to be bombarded with a lot of ideas. Many of them are going to be new to you. It's a boot camp not for burning body fat, but for the fat of the mind. Essentially, we've accumulated a tradition without questioning many of its frameworks. And that's partly what I want to do here and what the other speakers will be doing. We live and work within certain frameworks. Those are conceptual frameworks that have come about over the last 300-400 years, but particularly in the last 150 years since the encounter between Sikhi and the West. So if there is a main theme that we're looking at that is underlying this course, it's the encounter between Sikhi and the West. What has that done to Sikhi, and how can we understand that encounter in terms of lived experience today? And what I mean by mind fat is precisely those frameworks that have accumulated material which need to be wobbled, if I can use that term. You need to shake them a little bit so that the underpinnings of the framework becomes visible. So we need to examine existing frameworks for understanding Sikhi and Gurmat. I want to ask what these frameworks are and why are they so important. So I'll be setting the scene a little bit here. The other speakers, as they go through even lectures like the Guru Granth, the Dasan Granth, etc., and the Janam Sakhis, etc., they'll be referring to these frameworks all of the time, because we actually work within them, but we're blind to them. It's like wearing lenses and yet not being aware that we're wearing certain lenses. So the purpose of the workshop is not to provide you with information about an object of knowledge called Sikhism. All right? Yes, we will provide you plenty of knowledge. You get plenty of facts, etc. But that's not primarily the aim. Rather, the aim is to show how Sikhi became objectified, particularly in the last 100 years or so, and largely in the 20th century, as mere knowledge or data. Of course, it's a lived experience, but it has become objectified in a particular way that I'm going to sort of touch on more. So modern Sikhism, as we understand it, is not exactly the same as the early Sikh traditions or as the Sikh traditions of the 18th century. There is something uniquely interesting and not so unique about modern Sikhism. It's the result of what we could call colonial consciousness. Okay? It's a mindset that became, that was imposed upon Indians and other colonized cultures during the late 19th and early 20th century. And a key example of colonial consciousness is the category of religion. Now, we all take religion for granted. Whenever somebody asks us, what religion are you? We don't hesitate for a second saying, I'm a Sikh or we belong to Sikhism. But there's a little bit of a disconnect there, and I want to touch on that disconnect a little bit more. And sometimes when you touch these disconnects, you can get a little bit of an electrocution as well. You know, we'll see how this works out. So I want to recontextualize Sikhi within currents of thinking that resist the colonial legacies. Here's another aim of the course. We want to try and resist the last 150 years of colonial legacy. Now, what is that colonial legacy? I'll talk more about that as we get into the course. So, being able to resist that, I want to then release Sikhi as a mode of action or a life process. Okay? And primarily as a way of thinking. And how many of you actually think about Sikhi as a way of thinking? something that actually gives food for thought. Very few of us actually do that. We take our motivations for action and thought from other sources. Sikhi is just the performances that we do, the rituals that we carry out, and a lived practice that is privatized into our kind of private lives. But what about its public presence? How does that pan out? And that's one of the things I want to look at. So I want to treat it like a way of thinking. So for example, the Jews, nobody would hesitate to take Jewish philosophy seriously, even if they're non-Jews. I mean, it's so pervasive. And it's not just because it's the oldest Semitic religion, the oldest monotheistic religion. There's something much more there as well. The way that the Jews have cultivated ways of thinking as they moved into other cultures. And the Sikhs are at the point now, since the early 20th century, where they have the potential to tap into those currents of thinking. So essentially we'll be looking at the teaching of the Guru or Gurmat.